I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM players, and I know you may think I'm Eric Dickerson, but I really am not. I wish
What?
I was. Well, you see what I'm
All these years and I can't believe this.
It is what it is. All right, so we're still at SEAT in Daytona, still hanging out at the racetrack. There's really cool stuff going on here.
Well, this has been, look, I'm not a NASCAR fan whatsoever. I'm not a Formula One fan. I'm not an anything fan when it comes to cars. However, this is an amazing venue. Right? It's like, even as little as I care about cars whatsoever, even watching them move around the track at the speeds they're moving and on the angles they're moving is astonishing. And the venue itself is just like great.
But what if I told you that Mickey Mantle was once a NASCAR fan?
Well, he also drank.
All right, we're moving on. All right, so there are two special guests that we have with us today, and you're going to hear a lot about what they're doing, not just from us right now, but in the future. So we're here to talk with David West, Ricky Volante, about the Historical Basketball League. Ricky is co-founder and CEO. David is the COO, right? I always want to go back to your playing days. But yeah. Move on from there. All right, first of all, thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right, so I had the pleasure actually of moderating a panel with you guys yesterday to talk about the Historical Basketball League and kind of the disruptive model that you guys are putting together. So before we jump into that, give us a little of your personal background. We'll start with you, Ricky.
I'll try to do a better job than I did yesterday, too. I was a college athlete once upon a time. That created part of my passion for what we're doing with the HBL. From there, went to law school, became an attorney. My practice is predominantly focused on issues related to sports, film, and music, working with clientele and companies within those areas, in particular with professional athletes, which kind of created the other side of my passion that's involved with the HBL.
And I'm David West. Had a 15-year MBA career. Went to school and graduated from Xavier University in Ohio. I played for 4 teams in the NBA, won a couple championships. It was a good run.
He's so modest about it. It was a good run.
Always. Yeah. Good run. And so part of the HBL now. Looking to do things post-retirement or post-playing days that with great impact.
All right. So, Historical Basketball League. You got to tell us what it's all about, and you also got to tell us about the name too.
Yeah. So I guess we'll start with what it's about. We're trying to become the primary destination for elite college basketball players across the globe, competing directly with the NCAA, and then to some extent also with organizations like the NBL and the G League. But we're trying to become that 18 to 23-year-olds that are the best in the world at what they do in terms of college basketball. We want them to be playing in our league. If you want to.
Yeah, we're, again, a lot what Ricky said, we were aiming to become the premier destination for college basketball athletes to start. We want to create an environment that is centered around them and give them options and opportunities that benefit them more than the universities.
Yeah, I have a question that's actually not, I actually meant to ask you this yesterday, but do you have time for your actual law practice doing this?
I had to phase it down quite a bit. I've kept a select few clients that I still work with every now and then, but for the most part, the legal practice is on hold.
Kind of figured that.
But I still get to do, we do not have an in-house counsel right now, our general counsel. So I do the bulk of our legal work. So I'm by no means letting my skills go. Right. Doing all the contract drafting and legal analysis for the structure and agreements with partners and things like that. But to circle back, because I don't want to miss your second question. That's always a trick if you ask 2 questions. The second one doesn't get answered. The name itself. So in 1929, the Carnegie Foundation had a commission that was similar to what Condoleezza Rice recently did with the NCAA. And what they were trying to do was determine whether or not universities were providing anything beyond a scholarship to their college athletes. And so they surveyed 121 universities and found that 84 of them were outright paying players. When you think back to that point of time, like Harvard was a football powerhouse. Why? Harvard paid more than everybody else, and nothing more than that. I mean, Harvard was one of the first super stadiums within college football. They sort of, redeveloped them, and the University of Pennsylvania pretty much changed the entire landscape of college football, building the first 30 and 40 and 50,000 seat stadiums back in the beginning of the 20th century. And again, that's because they were paying more than the other universities.
It wasn't because of the Ivy League, it was about cash.
I'm sure that there are Ivy Leaguers that'll tell you that it was because of the education. It was not. It was because they were paying the most.
Wow. All right, that's really interesting. So let's talk about why you guys started to do this. What was the reason that you just wanted to come out and pretty much try to disrupt what the NCAA is all about?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's the right thing to do. When I was looking at the layout of the league and the concepts behind it and what the intent was, it's just the right thing to do. There's career opportunities that exist off the backs of the labor of these young athletes, and they are the people that have the fewest opportunities, the fewest career choices, particularly while they're in school. So the model that we have is just the right model to present to the market at this time.
So fill us in a little more on the actual model, like what you're actually going to do with these athletes and what your plan is for you too.
Yeah, so to start with, we're a single entity, so we're going to have 8 teams. The cities that those teams are going to be located in, going north to south: Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Richmond and Norfolk, Virginia, Raleigh and Charlotte, North Carolina, and Atlanta.
Why that?
Because Atlanta's great.
I mean, aside from Atlanta.
Yeah. Atlanta was a critical one for us, but overall, if you break down those markets, Atlanta, Philadelphia, and DC are 3 of the top 10 markets in the U.S. When you throw in Baltimore and Charlotte, you've got 5 of the top 21 markets in the U.S. And then Richmond, Norfolk, and Raleigh, where a lot of people might scratch their heads and say, how can you throw those in with the others? They ranked as 3 of the top 8 markets in terms of NBA viewership. And so Norfolk was number 1, Raleigh was number 7, and Richmond was number 8.
I would have never guessed that.
Yeah.
I still don't understand that. It's kind of the base.
Yeah, I mean, you've got so many players, and that's again part of why that's where we want to be, is the sheer density of players that have come from those areas, but just the basketball interest as well. It's the East Coast. Philly has a strong basketball history. Baltimore has a strong basketball history. Atlanta has a strong basketball history. They don't identify as much with football, at least in the college space. You get more into the deep south, and that's where you're going to have the football teams.
SEC country in Atlanta.
Right. So for us, culturally, we wanted to align where basketball is popular, the DMV area and the Research Triangle in Raleigh-Durham. You're talking about, it's like running through like 2024, the class of 2024 in terms of seniors in high school and what year they graduate. I think it's like 50+% of every single upcoming recruiting class is from those 2 areas.
No, really?
So it's, and in the AAU circuit, you can talk more about that part. There's just so many good teams from those areas.
Yeah, so we just feel strategically we need to be where the talent is, and at Mid-Atlantic areas where the bulk of the talent is, and it's been like that. We also understand that athletes tend to go east rather than west, and the international athletes and our neighbors to the north in Canada tend to come down into the Mid-Atlantic to play as well. So we felt like we needed to be where, in markets obviously that love basketball, love sport, but then also were easily accessible for these athletes.
So what becomes the value to the athlete?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for the athletes, first and foremost, we're going to be providing them with salaries. Salaries of $50,000 to $150,000 per season. Beyond that, we're also providing them with 5-year guaranteed scholarships, which can be completed on a non-continuous basis, or on a continuous basis. Mm-hmm. So if they go to the NBA, they can come back and complete it at a later date. In addition to that, there are not restrictions on name, image, and likeness, so they can sign endorsement deals, they can have agents, they can have financial planners, they can have attorneys, all the things that in some way, shape, or form is either impermissible or severely restricted by the NCAA. We felt like taking a focus on having it as player-centric as possible would allow us to bring in maybe not all, but a good percentage of the elite basketball players in the U.S. and globally. And then from there, your revenue streams, going back to your question about the business side, people are going to tune in and watch.
Yep.
Companies are going to want to be associated with these athletes. Another thing that happens within college is you kind of have this inefficient relationship between sponsors and the players, because the sponsorship deals can't be directly with the players. They have to be with the university, which means you have to work through the athletic department, which means the players get nothing out of it. So the athletic department is kind of playing middleman. The athletic department forces the athletes to participate. They're getting nothing out of it. So do you really get the bang for your buck? I mean, is anybody, I forget the car dealership now, but is anybody really buying more cars because Roy Williams was in a car commercial for UNC? Because they couldn't have
Maybe
Kobe
Roy
White.
and his family. I don't
Yeah,
know.
because they couldn't have Kobe White or Nasir Little,
Right.
or some of these guys that were with the team last year. That would be what would actually impact consumer behavior, not Roy Williams pulling up in a car, and I think it was Chevrolet, pulling up in a Chevy.
Right.
What I like about the model is people are getting salaries, they're getting paid, but they're also getting scholarships.
Yeah.
So instead of having to be tied to the university, who's under the NCAA rules, which restricts the kind of money they can make, now you're basically allowing these athletes to get a salary, find the college of their choice, and you give them scholarship money for them to go to that, and they get the opportunity to build their own brand and actually make money off of their own brand, as opposed to the NCAA making money off of their brand.
Right. And in the most simplified form is it's just like you have a student who has a summer job, right? So these guys' job is in the summer. Their job just happens to be basketball. In the fall, winter, and spring, they're students where they are developing and training and in an academic pursuit that fits their needs and is best going to serve them as they look forward to their professional futures.
I made like $1.25 an hour doing that job, minimum wage at the time, cleaning mailbags. Of course, I have no talent either, so that might be the reason.
I mean, but it's a great analogy in a lot of ways, and when you think about it, like CS majors, Google has a program that pays a CS major, if you get into it, $100,000 for the summer. None of us would ever think.
For the summer?
Yeah.
I need to.
Career change. Okay, sorry, we're done with the show. We have to go fill out a job application.
So none of us would, in our craziest minds, think that makes that student's academic experience less meaningful because they're getting paid while they're in college. All of us are like, no, that's exactly what you should be doing.
Right.
If you develop an app, if Google itself, was developed out of a Stanford course once upon a time, it's not like Stanford has 100% ownership of that as a result of the fact that it was developed in a Stanford class. So, there's those types of things that, again, it would be insane for us to say that Stanford should have had 100% ownership rights of Google. But if a Stanford athlete is playing for Stanford, they pretty much do.
So, in your model, this is actually a question that I don't think anyone actually has asked, now I think of it. But, so, if I remember, and I may be wrong about this, one of your criteria was they have to be a college student. Now, let's say they're incredibly talented, not college student. And when I say not college, I'm deliberately not saying high school. Because, if you remember years ago, huge amount of street talent in New York, for example, right, on the courts there, and a lot of well-known figures come at it. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, what about those kids?
Yeah, so that's why we aren't going to try to fit a square peg into a circular hole. We're going to work with those kids and their families and our academic advisors and our nonprofit to find an education that suits their needs. So
That's awesome.
we're not going to say, okay, you've got to go to this university. No, we're going to say, we'll identify the kids. We know the kids that don't fit the traditional classroom model, but we can put them in a trade school.
And you'll work to get them into the trade school?
Yeah, we're going to work to get them into, each one of our student athletes are going to have an educational track that they're on.
Wow.
And no singular athlete will have like there won't be a cookie cutter sort of
awesome.
look at it. We're going to be very nimble with it. We're going to make sure that it suits the needs of that athlete. And we're going to utilize the community college network, local college, smaller universities, online curriculums, like we said, vocational and trade schools if we have to, but we're going to find some sort of education that fits each one of our athletes.
Both of us went to small schools. I mean, my average class size was between like 12 and 15. I think
Seriously?
we've talked about yours was similar.
Yeah.
And I know for me personally, that was a huge benefit in my personal development. Rather than being dropped onto whatever major university you want to pick, and you're in a class of 100 where you can kind of float in and out and not be held responsible for your academic side of things. Whereas there was a standard, there was sort of an establishment of responsibility. And that's part of what we want to do, is instill upon these guys what they can do on and off the court, and how everything off the court impacts what they do on the court as well. So financial literacy, public speaking, media training, selecting and vetting agents, all these things that, whether you like it or not, it's going to impact how successful you are as an athlete.
You were saying you don't get that from college.
Right.
You talk to a lot of young talent,
Mm-hmm.
and if things don't go the way they expect them to go, they're like lost.
Yeah, so most athletes today are in educational tracks that meet the needs of their athletic requirements, right? So your schooling, your major, your class schedule is all built around to make you most available for athletics. So there's very little space or room for the guys who want to pursue certain academic tracks. If it interferes with your sport, then that's something that's off the table, right? Because you go to that school as an athlete first, particularly the scholarship athletes, and that's one of the narratives we want to change and we want to fight, right? Players have the right, if they want to commit themselves to the sport. Sports are a global phenomenon and a massive opportunities, not just at the player level, but the whole range of athletics can be available to these guys. So for us, it's most important, like I said, to put them in tracks that fit what they want to do and fit what, we ask them, what is your idea? What are you going to do after sport? What are you going to do while you're in sport? Because as a professional, a former professional now, the conversation is, for us, is once you become a pro, you can't wait to figure out your next step when the basketball is done. So you've got to start figuring out your next steps while you're in your career. And that's relatively new for professional athletes, because we were trained and brought up to put all of our eggs in this basket. And for this younger generation, this new, this future athlete, they have all types of interests and they have all types of ideas and things that they want to pursue, such as being media mavens. I mean, these guys are talented. They have other things that pique their interest, and basketball is still their centerpiece, but they don't buy into the idea that they've got to deny these other aspects of themselves and not build these other aspects of themselves just to play the sport.
We talked about this yesterday, actually, and that's part of how we want to reshape how people view college athletes to start with, but athletes overall, is they aren't just athletes. A lot of people only think of it in that term, that an athlete is an athlete. They're not. They have huge, significant platforms. They have significant influence, and we want to be able to, again, start to shape that a little earlier so that these guys understand going into the NBA, this is what I can accomplish, not just on the court, but off the court, to have a more profound success. on my community where I came from my family, all those types of things, because a lot of these guys come from low socioeconomic backgrounds, and that's part of the stress that is associated with the current system, is that these guys have to go a year unpaid, and again, they come from families that live below the poverty line. They've got people that are counting on them to make it.
Yeah, and to his point, there are, in the last few years, parents, there have been some parents who've been outspoken about the fact that, they know that they're committing their child into a system that's going to exploit them, and they've been very vocal about it. So, the winds are changing. People, I think, are aware now of the level of imbalance that currently exists in the system. And so we're looking to be another option for folks.
Well, you're actually, one thing that occurs to me on a slightly different level is you're actually helping these young people, and they are, one other thing that's incontrovertible about them is they're young, right?
Yeah.
And, and they still have a ways to go to be mature too. But you're actually helping them find their life. You're not giving them their life, that's up to them, but you're helping them find their life, right? And that's really that's huge, actually, because, look, one of the other reasons that, to your point of athletes being seen as athletes, is because a number of them are excessive and they aren't that mature, really, and comes across. Unfortunately, they're the ones who get the press a lot, where the ones who are, well, like one of the things I was talking about actually with you yesterday is one of the reasons that I always really liked you, even though you were on the Pelicans, right? But and I'm a Knicks fan, but it wasn't just that you were like a tenacious player. Look, you are, and you were an all-star, and you did all these great things on the court. But every time I'd watch you interviewed, and that really kept striking me, that you were grounded, you were articulate, you were mature, you were thoughtful, and you were kind. And that came across in public to people, right? But you're kind of role model. I hate to put it, all that pressure on you, but I just did.
Just don't say that about Charles Martin.
Good luck with all that. But really, if let's say there were lots more of you, people might have actually a different view. So what you're helping to do is guide them to being more, again, putting all the pressure on you, but to be more like you. And I know that's not how you're thinking of it, believe me, that's how I'm thinking of it. But that is true. And that's really important for young people, period. So whether they're athletes or not, right? And that actually also gets to what you're talking about with the diverse interests, but it's also how to handle them. And you're teaching that with your advisors and your coaches and all the other people you're going to be bringing in.
Right, absolutely.
All right, this has been great, but I got to throw one thing out there. You are going up against the NCAA and all the power and money they have. So what are the things that keep you up at night the most? What are the biggest challenges that you foresee with battling, a behemoth?
Look at that, both sides.
It's pretty hard. Wow. Good night's sleep.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Well, I'll start my answer by saying mountains are there to be climbed. So this absolutely is going to be a mountain. We aren't shying away from that. They were formed in 1906. College sports generates about $13 billion a year. The financial power and economic power that they can wield is significant. And it's not just the NCAA. A lot of people think about it in just those terms. There's a lot of institutions and corporations and donors and alums and universities out there that all benefit from the system, from the status quo remaining as it is. And so, there's a lot of people out there that if we're successful, their pockets are going to get a little lighter. So for us, it's about maneuvering and finding the right groups that want to be associated with us and work with us. So like taking distribution as an example, looking at purely digital companies that don't have long-standing relationships with the NCAA or conferences. And there's a lot of them out there, that people don't even realize. Facebook Watch, Amazon Prime, Twitch, Flow Sports, 11 Sports, Caffeine, Stadium, and I'm sure I'm missing a whole bunch. So by no means, once upon a time when leagues were trying to compete against, whether it was the NFL or the MLB or whatever, you had 4 channels sometimes 2 or 3 channels, and those were your only options to distribute. That's no longer a challenge today. We can get the product in front of people, but it's about finding mission-aligned investors, going back to your original question now. Mission-aligned investors who understand what we're trying to accomplish as much on the court as off the court. People that are going to understand that this is going to take time to develop and develop the right way. What we launch with next June, a decade from now is probably going to look those 2 products are probably going to look very different. Right. But because we have a clean slate, because we don't have a century's worth of policies and procedures that have always been in place that we have to follow, we can tweak and go back and forth on different things to find out what the fans want, what's going to be supported, what the players want.
Right.
And so, it's all a challenge, but if it was easy, someone would have already done what we're doing.
Good point.
I think I've got one last question, really. So you guys, Brent interviewed you 2 yesterday, and you really impacted a lot of people at SEAT. You really did. And you impacted in terms of what you're thinking and how you're thinking, but you also impacted it 2 other ways. One is that everyone knows the passion you both had for it. And again, we're talking about you're sort of quietly excited, and you seem to be more quiet excitement type too. And you're not jumping up and down, right? But everyone felt the passion. On the other hand, they also, you know where I'm going with this, don't you? Right? They also actually saw your relationship as amazing, how you interacted with each other, how you literally were finishing a sentence. At one point, David, I remember you said, I'll start and then Ricky will complete it. Right? So I remember thinking, wow, that's pretty good. And you know how I equate it, man. I mean, this was like Renee Zellweger and Tom Cruise. And again, you guys pick which one you are. But you should tell people how you met, because, it actually feels like you've known each other literally your entire lives.
That's different. That's more like when Harry met Sally. Or when Ricky met David.
Okay, and again, pick your.
In the Tom Cruise example, I'm shorter, so I guess I get Tom Cruise. More seriously, so it was January 2018. We'd established the business plan. We knew where we were going to go as a company. My co-founder, who we haven't talked about at all yet, but Andy Schwartz, who's an economist. He's 5'6". He's an economist through and through. I mean that in the most loving way, Andy, if you watch this. That he's a bit of he looks like a nerd. I mean, that's what it is.
You called him short and a nerd. Anything else?
Hell of a loving way to put it.
So,
and you see when you're mad at him.
I can't talk.
Collectively, the 2 of us, when we would walk into a room to present to somebody, they'd go, "All right, that's a great idea. Who's your basketball person?" Because it doesn't look like either of you are the basketball person. And so, we needed to answer that question. And we went through a whole process of former players, front office personnel, people from other sports that maybe had a passion about basketball and wanted to get involved that could sort of answer that question of, all right, you have a great idea, but how do you actually get in front of the players? And so we sat down and we had a short list. And I'm not saying that just because we got him and because he's sitting here next to me, but David was the first name on our list. We knew that there was a significant likelihood that he would retire in the near future, especially if the Warriors beat my Cavaliers again, which happened, and then he retired. And
wow, you're actually partners, and I didn't even realize. I wasn't even thinking that. Of course, you're a Cavaliers fan.
Well,
the funny part, so Andy's based in the Bay. I'm getting way off topic here. He's based in the Bay. When we started this idea was in 2015. The entire duration up until this past season, Andy's a Warriors fan who lives in Oakland. I live in Cleveland, so we had a friendly rivalry going on.
That's why it took 3 years.
We were very cordial in seasons 1 and 2, but then in season 3, once we both had one, it was not as cordial that year. But all that aside, we connected with David and through one of our advisors, who's a brother of one of his old teammates, and. I don't know, at the moment we met, I will say it seemed like all the things that we had been told about him were immediately proven correct. And, we were super excited to get him on board.
Did the phrase "you complete me" come out?
It will now.
Yeah, so it was a teammate, probably one of the most intellectually stimulating teams I'd ever been on. So every day we were having like real conversations, and so one day he's like, you need to talk to my brother. You and my brother have a lot of similar interests. So I reached out to Luke. We got in touch. He told me, he said, there's something coming. I think you'll be perfect for it, but just give it some time. So we kept in contact over the next couple of years. And then, we touched base one specific time about the story I told you guys earlier about the football player. That story came to me via him. And when I retired, he was immediately on my phone. Hey man, I need you to meet these guys. I need you to talk to these guys. I think there's a perfect synergy here for you and sort of what you want to do. And we think you would be great. And so it took him a couple weeks. We had a few conversations and then got on the phone with Ricky and immediately felt, again, I'm all about impact and, people aligning with doing what's right. And, it was really easy. After that, we figured out that, obviously, the challenge is going to be great, but, you got to have the courage and the confidence to meet it head on. And, we sort of go by that. It has its ups and downs as a startup where we're pushing and we know we're fighting an uphill battle, but mountains and hills, like Ricky said, were built to be climbed. So,
and then he said, "You complete me."
The first time we met him, the first time we met in person, the first time we met in person, he had literally just found out that his wife was pregnant too. So it was just, he was about a half an hour late, which I had no issue with, particularly once he got there and he told me why. Yeah. So I mean, it was just the circumstances under which we got connected and then got to meet. It just,
that's awesome.
It all kind of aligned and felt like it was kind of supposed to happen.
I got to ask just one last question, and this is an NBA question. How hard was it to walk away from the game?
You know what? It wasn't as hard as I thought. When I played competitive basketball from the time I was 5 years old and retired at 38. So
wow,
it's the bulk of my life. I don't remember, summers without it, winters without it. So, the last few years of my career, you start, thinking about, what haven't you done? And for me, it was win at the very highest level.
Yep.
And so
you've been close.
Yeah, right. We've been close, but winning was the culmination. So once I got there, and then we did it again. I said it was enough. I thought 15 was, my wife was she was pushing me toward 15 because she likes the number 15. I felt that 15 was a good, solid number to
end it on.
To cap it on. Yeah.
That's funny. I actually started playing competitive basketball when I was 5, but I retired when I was 6.
There you go. Right. There it is. That's our basketball. Well, this has been really great. Where can people go to learn more about what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so the website is hbleague.com. Twitter account is HB_league, and then the Instagram account is @HBleague.